how do you know if what you're feeling is actually something that's legit and that you want to act on?
The number one thing that I see a lot of people getting hung up on, because you have to learn to differentiate between your fear and your intuition. And if your
Yeah.
body is out of alignment, if you have bad habits that have been feeding a misalignment, you will have misaligned guidance systems, right? Your GPS has to be attuned or adjusted. So this is the birthing, and this is why I believe that biohacking and medicine and even religion and faith, all these things are about to go parabolic, because we have to be in that experience without getting attached or being driven by our triggers, either in a positive way or a negative way. We have to learn how to distinguish between our fear and our intuition. And the stronger your faith gets, the more confident you will be in your faith and your intuitive decisions.
Man, oh man, am I stoked. We have one of my favorite Myth Slayer Cafe visitors ever back in the house today, Nahum Vizakis. Nahum, thank you for coming back.
Scott Mason, my brother, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation. Let's get it.
The last one was mind-blowing. I have a feeling that many more brains are going to be splattered on the floor today, thanks to whatever you bring into the room. So I appreciate this. All the more considering the question that we're going to be addressing in this conversation, which is, what are some practical tools that people can use to be able to navigate a lot of the energetic, for lack of a better word, psychic or larger subconscious shifts that are going on in the world? We are in a period of extreme turmoil between AI, between cultural changes, technology, political changes, shifting global alliances, as well as changes in the nature of the workplace, of the economy, and how people define their spirituality. I mean, it's a lot for people to go through. And so really being able to think through exactly how those changes can be navigated, I really think there's going to be some valuable insights, and I'm looking forward to hearing exactly what you have to say about that.
Man, I'll tell you what, I love talking about the energies because I feel so deeply connected to it. I would say one thing though, the word turmoil, I don't really feel like that's an accurate depiction of the energy. It can be if you're tuned into that. However, I like to try to have a more optimistic view and maybe just look at it as opportunities for growth and change.
That is an incredible way to begin to segue into the actual mythical framework that we're going to talk about. Because
Yeah.
you're right, how we frame the circumstances that we're dealing with when there's rapid change is totally at the root of the story of Atlas, who we're talking about as the subject of the entire program. Yeah. So Atlas, in common iconography, is this huge, strong guy, kind of like you, who is in some depictions carrying the globe on his back. Hey, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some depictions, he's carrying the globe on his back. Other depictions, he's carrying the vault of the sky. The vault of the sky is more true to the historical myth, and that's what we'll talk about principally as a way of transitioning into the discussion. Change is at the root of the Atlas story because him ending up being this deity that had to hold up the vault of the sky forever and ever and ever. He ended up in that exact position because he was totally unable to deal with change.
Yeah.
Atlas was part of the very first race of gods who ever existed in Greek myths, the Titans. The Titans were elemental, they were powerful, but they also did not change. They were very resistant to it. Now, they ruled over the universe for a long time during an era that the ancient Greeks called the Golden Age. But the leader of the Titans had been told by a prophet that if he had a son, that son would grow up and depose him. And so the leader of the Titans, named Cronus, ate
Mm.
his first set of children. Eventually, Cronus's wife got sick of her children being eaten alive.
I mean, can you blame him?
Thank you. Seriously. I mean, enough isn't. How much can a girl take? Come on. And so she fed Cronus a stone and raised her youngest son, named Zeus, safely in a cave somewhere remote. Eventually, Zeus came back and he spoke to the Titans and offered them the opportunity to side with him, as well as his other brothers and sisters that had since been regurgitated by Cronus due to a long series of events that we won't get into. And if they sided with him, Zeus, they could become leaders and creators in the new universe. But if they chose not to accept the change that Zeus and the other Olympian gods represented, woe unto them. A massive war followed because the Titans, again, being resistant to change, did not view it as an opportunity. They viewed it as something that was an existential threat. And eventually, Zeus, the upstarter, conquered them. They were all punished in one way or the other. Atlas was punished by having to hold up the sky. This was not some light punishment. The sky, the firmament in this time, was viewed as a huge, endlessly heavy dome that stars were placed upon and the sun and the moon literally traversed. So he was carrying on his shoulders a burden that was as heavy as the earth itself. And not only that, but he was banished away from the bulk of humanity and up from the bulk of other creation off in a corner somewhere of the universe. So he had to bear this burden forever and ever and ever all alone. And not only that, but right at his feet was a sacred garden of the goddess Hera. And in that garden was the ancient Greek equivalent of the tree of life, and beautiful nymphs that guarded it, as well as all sorts of other magical creations, literally at his feet. But something that he could never reach for, never have. He was isolated, carrying a burden, and forever tempted by beauty and wonderful experiences that were eternally out of his reach, all because he fought change. Nahum, how does this relate to the topic of our conversation? Please
Man,
tell us all.
fundamentally, that is, I kind of feel like that's actually what all humans are facing right now in their lives, because change is upon us. We are actually, this February of 2026 is going to go down in history as probably the greatest time that we've had in our lives. We have not seen, astrologically speaking, we have not seen a transit of Saturn Neptune conjuncting at the place of literal creation in the astrological chart. 0 degrees of Aries is literally the vertex point of creation. We have not seen this since 4,361 BC. And if you go back into biblical texts, that's right about the birthing of humanity. So we are coming into a time where humanity is evolving. Now, we don't know where that's going to go. And when we don't know, our ego starts to go nuts because it wants to control, it wants to figure it out, it wants to keep its creature comforts, whatever life that has been built up until this point. We are in the process right now of receiving the philosophical and existential concept that our reality is actually not that. We are shifting into a new fundamental understanding of reality, even going down to information will be coming out soon, I'd say with this year for sure, about the origins of humanity. Right? There's a lot of information, ancient texts, things that are coming out now that with AI, they're able to translate and transliterate and combine all this information into new, deeper understandings of where humanity was created, about aliens and extraterrestrials and all these next level things that, people like you and I, we've already been introduced to all these kind of things, but the mainstream, person
Yeah.
that is living like, mostly in the United States, but other places as well, are about to get downloaded with so much information that contradicts the construct that we're living in now, that if we're not open to change, I feel like it's a bit of a cautionary tale, right? That one will be double down, if you will, in holding that burden. And we don't want to do that, which is why I feel like so many people are coming up and speaking and discussing these things. And look, whatever you resonate with, I'm starting to see a lot of people out there almost getting very tribal. Christians, like even, Christianity, we have these small differences in belief systems that are saying, well, Christians should say this and Christians shouldn't say that, and Muslims are bad for this or good for that, or there's the Gnostics, and then there's the spiritualists and the New Age and all these different things, and everybody has something wrong with somebody else. Let all that stuff go, because the truth is, your truth comes from what you feel inside, and we are all feeling these new sensations that we've never felt before. So there's this feeling, this sensation that the bubble's about to burst, the pimple's gonna pop, something. And if you look out there on social media land, you're seeing all these things and all massive amount of contradicting information. We are getting hit with information overload. So it's
Yeah.
very important, right? In order to embrace the change, we must step back and go within in order to be able to flow with wherever the universe is guiding us. So with that, speaking about the mythology of Atlas, I find it pertinent to bring up the concept of three-eye Atlas, because there's a lot of people talking about that right now in the astrology world. We have people that are claiming that they're channeling from this. Some people are calling it a spaceship, some kind of. The one thing that we do know is that it came from outside of our solar system. Now, historically speaking, whenever we've discovered a planet or a body out there in the universe, there has been major shifts and changes in humanity. So discovering this new body of some sort that's out there in the cosmos that just happens to be traveling not in accordance to the gravitational pull of the planets, but somehow it's able to control its movement, but also it's staying within the ecliptic, within 5 degrees of the ecliptic, which is very interesting because that directly affects our consciousness. Combine that with all the CMEs and all the solar activity coming off of the sun, I feel like we're coming into a massive place of exposure or disclosure, if you will. Now, I'm not going to claim to know exactly what that's about, but we're already seeing, Mr. Epstein there and his files coming out. That stuff is already horrific and terrible.
Yeah.
The truth needs to come out. So the change is really where we're going. All the change that is happening is just uprooting all that is hidden. Now, and this is gonna towards later on in the month, right? But this month, the apex of the birthing of this energy is taking place. And as this energy comes into its prominence and stabilizes into our new level of consciousness, anything that is hidden, anything that is outside of divine alignment, it's going to come back and manifest like a rubber band. So let's say, for instance, you're in a relationship and you're constantly triggered. Well, if there's no abuse happening in the relationship and you're allowing your triggers to control you, you're not learning the lesson from it. And you're projecting and you're yelling back or something's happening, that rubber band, it's going to come back and it's going to hit you. You're going to get sick. You're going to start to question yourself. Or maybe your whole, like they're going to kick you out of the house or you're going to kick them out of the house. And then after you're away, you're going to realize, wow, it was actually me. they were actually trying to teach me a lesson. It was nice. And the lesson is going to come quickly. However, we have to be very cautious and aware of where our consciousness is and how we are approaching and moving through our triggers. What is most important right now is understanding that our triggers are our teachers because of this change, because nothing can be hidden anymore. If there is anything that you are hiding, even from yourself, it's not going to have the same effect. It's not going to have the same outcome as it did before. Now, I'm sure people are already feeling this, but this is true, especially for people that are in jobs where they're working, but they're not fulfilled. I need to get this money. I need to do this hustle and grind, right? But I hate what I do. That discomfort of not doing what you in your heart you really want to do is going to become so strong that you just can't keep doing it anymore. If you're in a relationship that is not right for you, or that you're not learning a lesson, that is going to finally, the pimple's going to pop and something's going to shift and change. If you have an addiction, or if you are struggling with depression or anxiety, the meaning, the underlying meaning of that psychological imbalance is going to be right in your face. Now, the key is you have to be willing to accept the truth of it. So the answers will be right there. But are you willing to accept it? And that's the change. I do believe and feel that we're going to have many opportunities to seek out and to grow and to learn and to be able to move through all this stuff, because we have free will, but divine is calling us home, essentially, as a collective. 𝗏𝗏 Atlas will be transiting past Jupiter, I believe it's April or May. And around that time, I think is the apex of that 𝗏𝗏 Atlas energy. And when I say that energy, the apex is going to hit us the hardest, meaning this extraterrestrial energy, this new birthing of this multidimensional self is going to hit at an all-time high, what people have been calling for years the event, or something like that. Now, I'm not going to claim to know exactly what is going to happen, but I will say that we're also seeing a bifurcation, a split in consciousness, like you were saying at the very beginning about how it looks like countries are going to war. There's a turmoil and crisis in the financial system, in the real estate system, in AI. There's forces that are working, competing and at war with each other. There trademarks and all these different things. So if you tune into that energy and you refuse to do the inner work, then you, like a magnet, you just start to be sucked down that rabbit hole. And maybe you'll decide, I want to go fight for my side. I want to go join the military, or I want to go to war. Essentially, you're going to start desire to go down because you feel it's honorable. It's the right thing to do. It's what needs to be done because whatever story that you're creating in your mind. Or you could go the other direction. The other direction is divinity. The other direction is from the heart. It's, what do I want to create in this world to make it a better place? What do I feel is the right thing to do for me to be of service to others?
I love it. And we're going to dive into that latter part in a lot of depth. You've said so much that was so interesting. We could move this conversation like 15 different ways, but I want to dial it back a little bit just to make sure that everyone who might be watching this episode has clarity as to some of the terms that we're using. Just one acronym that you used earlier, I think it was a CME. What is a CME?
Yeah. A coronal mass ejection.
And what does that mean exactly?
Of course. So the sun right now, it's activating, or it's getting these pulses of these radioactive blasts, like essentially nuclear detonations on the sun. And when this detonation goes off, it shoots a plasma jet, essentially, of radiation, and majority of them have been going towards our planet. Now, this happens pretty much all the time, to varying degrees of intensity. However, right now, they are happening so fast and so big and intense. We're getting parallel levels of coronal mass ejections to what happened with the Carrington event. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but back in 1863, which ironically the astrology is right in the same place in with some aspects as 1863. That was a coronal mass ejection that knocked out the power grid. So you hear a lot of people talking about, like, you know, a cyber attack or the power grid going down and whatnot. These CMEs, if they get strong enough and intense enough, they could short circuit our power grid, and that could really change society in a whole lot of ways.
Yeah, it could. Talk about change, needing to be
Ah,
prepared for something that could seem like turmoil, but could actually be opportunity. Okay, so now we know what a CME is. Let's
yeah.
talk a little bit for the total lay person about what three eye atlas is. And it's not three eyes as three eye as in three eyes, but it is with an eye. So explain what that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, so the Three Eye Atlas is the name that was given based on the telescope that picked it up. But essentially, it's a body of different gases. There's conflicting evidence about what people believe it is. Some people
Mm,
say it's a extraterrestrial aircraft. Some people say it's a comet. Others have varying descriptions of this. I personally believe that it is some sort of multi-dimensional body of energy that is actually, I feel, doing us a solid, helping
mm,
to navigate a non-cataclysmic ascension process. So this external energy was coming in to help support our awakening process. And each time it essentially flies by a planet, it's conjuncting that planet. And when a body of energy is it goes by or connecting to another body of energy, there's a gravitational process that or interaction that's going on there. I believe, and this is just my belief, I who knows what's, I'm sure 10, 20, 30 years down the road, somebody will figure it out. But what I feel is accurate is as Three Eye Atlas is passing around these planets, each planet, it's activating a particular part of our consciousness, maybe even activating our DNA. And there's a set of planets in our entire solar system. So it's going through this sort of round robin process of activating every planet that's hitting all the different parts of our consciousness. And once it gets to Jupiter, that's the final piece. So that is where it's opened up the final part of our consciousness. And just so happens that Jupiter is in an exalted position and it's the most powerful, expansive energy in our consciousness, right? So when that happens, we're going to be exposed or expanded into new layers of sight of sensational feeling, meaning, you know how we only see in a certain spectrum of the light, right? There's
yeah.
infrared light. So it would be like us suddenly now we can see infrared light. Now, to some people, that's going to freak them out. Oh my God, what's going on? I'm sick. I'm dying. Something's going on. But if you're open-minded and if you're open to change, looking at it like a child that just, caught Santa eating a cookie, right? What is this going on? What is this story that I've been telling myself? Where is the universe guiding me to go? What is my soul path and purpose? I feel like a lot of people are going to get a bit of a reality check because, especially if they've been solidified in thinking that this is my life purpose, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm meant to be here for, because that is going to shift. It's either going to expand, shift, or change in one way, shape, or form, so that we're all doing something new that is activating, or it's the action is potentiating the activation of this new energy for us to move into a bigger version of who we are meant to be.
Absolutely love that. And with regards to the energetic impact of Jupiter, let's not forget for a second, thinking about this in mythical terms, that Jupiter is simply the Roman name for Zeus, which was
Yeah.
as we mentioned earlier, the king of the
Yeah.
Olympian gods and the most expansive of the spiritual essences that the
Ooh.
ancient Greek gods represented. But before we get back into that expansion, because I really want us to move into the conversation next, again, speaking to the layperson, and I want to try and get this in as brief but as simple of a set of terms as you can, I want to
Okay.
talk a little bit about the way in which you're discussing astrology. Okay, I grew up in Kansas, backwoods Kansas, and astrology to me, growing up and in a Christian church,
Mm-hmm.
fundamentalist Christian church probably would be considered. And
Wow.
astrology was this column in the daily newspaper that you read that was associated with your horoscope that was generic and everyone sort of knew was bullshit. And
Yeah.
you would have these things around if a planet is here in the sky or if a star is placed here, then this is what your future would be. So it was
Yeah.
this presented as, and I think holds a space in the common population as this very simplistic, almost like fortune telling thing based on how we observe by coincidence, wherever we are on this planet, the stars and the constellations, which, as many people may or may not know themselves, again, came from Greek myths. But
Yeah.
you're talking about astrology on a very different level than that. And so when people hear astrology, they can immediately throw it out the window as something fluffy or frivolous, and not
Right.
having depth. So maybe if you could just explain when you refer to astrological observations or astrological energy fields that you're able to pull from and think about how behaviors or people's larger consciousness or how the culture is shifting. Where are you coming from?
That's an excellent question, and thank you. I would love to clear this up. So, for me, astrology is essentially esoteric psychology. Each planet in our solar system represents an archetypal pattern of our consciousness. So, when we combine all the different planets and understand the different parts that it plays in our personality traits, then we get to paint a picture for who we are. Now, mix that with the houses that represent different parts of your life and then aspects, how they're communicating to each other. This is how we're able to see our tendencies towards behavior patterns, the things that we'll struggle with in life, the things that we'll be strong at or good at in life, our physical appearance, even, right? The way that we communicate, all these things and much, much more. Christians, and I've been actually doing a lot of research on this lately because I believe in Jesus Christ, and I have many, many, many friends, and my family are all Christians. So I wanted to understand the resistance to astrology because it didn't really
Mhm.
make much sense to me. Now, in the Bible, and I'm paraphrasing here, of course, but from my understanding, the Bible condemns the the uh the worship of planets. Like back in Greek and Roman times, they would pray to the rain god or pray to Jupiter or the different planets. I don't believe that. You don't pray, you don't worship these planets. They're not, I feel like the concept of them being deities is misguiding.
Mm.
The way I see it is this is a science and art sort of fused together where there are solid characteristics to how these different planets influence our psychology. And when we understand, and this is how I really learned a lot about myself, we understand how these interact in your birth chart, specifically regarding yourself, then you can understand yourself better. And when you understand yourself, your unconscious patterns, your
Mhm.
conscious patterns, the tendencies of what, like, do you have addictive tendencies or do you have a tendency to be passive aggressive or too aggressive? Do you have a tendency to shoot first and ask questions later? All these different things can be identified when you understand that. Then you can temper yourself and balance yourself out. Now, there should not be any worship to planets or deities. I do agree in that sense. And I don't think that it's harmful to take this information and utilize it to make your life better. And if it has a
Right.
net positive benefit, then it's good. If it has a net negative benefit, it is not good.
Yeah.
And if you can keep it as simple as that, and recognize that anything, if you just dip your toe into it and look at, like you said, like the little 3-sentence, horoscope, in the paper, 20 years ago, that stuff is shenanigans. That is
Yeah.
nonsense,
Yeah.
right? You don't want to read half of a chemistry set and, try to actually do the experiment. It's a very bad idea, right? You want to have all the information, all the knowledge. And if you don't, then talk to someone who does. So with that understanding, when we apply the consciousness activation, if you will, from this foreign object, which I don't think it's fully been identified or understood, like the energy of Saturn or the energy of Jupiter or the energy of Mercury. But like, we understand fully the personality traits or the parts of our consciousness that it affects. But this is all new for us, and we're not going to know or understand it probably for a while. So we are all collectively in this space of almost like a cocoon or a void space where we can all feel like something's coming, and something is coming, but it's not something that you can really get ready for. The way that you approach this is through doing the self-care by loving yourself and staying ready for life. That's it.
And that's a big boom of a moment and the perfect way for us to begin to think about moving into the next phase of this conversation. But before we go any further, I want to point out something that you said that I think is really powerful.
Yes, sir.
The idea of the bodies in the cosmos representing or being allegories for, or having energy that connects to various archetypes upon which human behaviors can either be aspired to, be cautionary tales against, or in other ways connect us to a deeper understanding of our consciousness and who we are inside and what we're capable of, what we're becoming, what we do and what we don't want to do is really powerful. My personal belief, and you talked about Christian beliefs, or at least the Christianity that you're bringing into the room and the version that you're embracing, whatever gives you the ability to have a framework for understanding yourself, to enlighten and develop self-knowledge and wisdom with regards to your life situation, where you're looking to go, to me is a system with real power. I agree. I think it's nonsensical, foolish, and against basic science to actually be worshiping a gas giant named Jupiter millions of miles away in the universe. It's a non-sentient body. It doesn't care about us. But thinking about it symbolically is a tool of incredible power. And that's why also when you think about these bodies in archetypical terms, the fact that they were named after gods and goddesses and characters from myth actually makes a lot of sense. I don't literally think that Zeus was walking around the earth. Even in ancient Greece, people went up to Mount Olympus. We know that for a fact because we have ruins of altars and things that they left once they were there. They knew full well that if they went to the top of Mount Olympus, there wouldn't be gods or goddesses floating around and palaces and things like that. They understood these things symbolically. It's almost like once we moved into the highly empirical, concretized only way of viewing the world, that we said that these things literally have to be true or they don't have any validity at all. Whereas really a lot of what can be true or not is something that is not measurable in the least, such as which archetype speaks to you. What is the energy that you're putting out? What's the energy that you're stepping into? What's the energy that you had? What is the energy that you become? And really, that's, from what I'm hearing, what the astrology that you're discussing is about. And it's certainly what the mythical mindset that I am discussing is talking about. Now, let's talk about the shifting of consciousness that's coming, as well as something that you hinted at, which is, okay, we may not be able to control future events that are coming our way, whether we like them or not, but we can be ready because
Yeah.
that's something that can be very hard. It's one of those simple pieces of advice that we can give, but is actually not simple at all once you step a little bit behind the words. So I want to talk about the concept of being ready, but before we talk about being ready, let's explain what we're talking about being ready for.
Yeah. So personally, this excites me a lot
Oh, good.
because the phrase that comes to my mind for where we're all going is activation of divine alignment.
Mhm.
Now, let's break that down and reverse engineer it. Some other people in the astrology world have been calling 2026 year zero. We are this year, and this year hasn't started yet. Energetically speaking, it actually starts in March 21st, when
Really?
Aries. Yes. So we're still in the ending phases. Okay.
Oh, okay. Wow.
However, starting February 17th, we enter eclipse season. Then February 20th, just 3 days later, we have an exact apex conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. Then when we move into Aries season, we're going to have 9 planetary bodies in Aries at once. That's never happened before, to my knowledge. And that's going to be associated with the new moon in Aries as well. Aries, this is like starting with the 0 point of actual creation. We are all birthing a new life. And this new life is literally a new reality. We're not just changing the chapter. The old book is done of our lives. So there's going to be things that happen out in the world, but all the things that happen out in the world are reflection of what's happening collectively within us. So here's the best way that I can explain this. Saturn rules reality and karma. Okay. Neptune rules fantasy, illusion, the media, and divine connection. So they're essentially opposites. And Saturn conjuncts Neptune every 36 years, right? Just at this particular degree point, it's very special and very unique. Like I said, we haven't seen it in almost 6,000 years. So when up until the 20th, right, we are closing out what we knew as reality. Once Saturn connects to Neptune, and it'll be beyond Neptune after the 20th, right? So it's the build up until the 20th. It just so happens to be almost exactly at the same time as a solar eclipse, which is also activating a new 18-month cycle. So as Saturn passes Neptune, suddenly what we thought reality was now feels like the illusion. And now what felt like illusion or fantasy or dream before is actually becoming our new reality. So say, for example, I'll take me, okay, because I've always had this feeling deep down that I was meant to be out in the world, meant to be famous, meant to be, influencing millions of people, right? But there was always parts of me that I had to face that held me back, belief systems, right? I didn't feel like I was worthy. I was abandoned, rejected. I didn't know how to handle all the feedback from the world, okay? Insecurities, imposter syndrome, all these things that I had to move through and I did during my, 14-year, I guess, dark night of the soul. So now that dream, that knowing deep down that I've always known is going to happen, I just have no idea how to make it happen. It starts to happen when the surrender becomes the foundational set point of moving through life. So it's like we're going to be learning. We can either go kicking and screaming or we can go voluntarily. The kicking and screaming is what Atlas did. And look where he ended up.
Right.
Right. So, and I'm hearing a lot of people lately, saying, man, I'm so strong. I'm just so tired of being so strong. I have to be strong. That strength is actually stubbornness. It's not helping you. Being truly strong equates to surrender, which feels counterintuitive. It's backwards because that is where faith comes from. Having your heart open and, okay, God, you're in the driver's seat. Go with it and thy will be done. And I'm here to be of service to humanity. And then now when we say that, it's like, okay, cool. But now what? Well, now what is staying ready? It's getting up at 6 a.m. every day. It's going to the gym. It's eating healthy. It's getting to bed at 9 p.m. every night. It's honoring your commitment to your relationship. It's honoring your commitment to your children. It's doing the right thing and taking care of yourself so that when the opportunities do start to present themselves, you're ready to go. And when it feels right, it is right. Now, some people have been living like this for a while. A lot of people have not. A lot of people, we've been programmed, right,
Yeah.
to structure, to schedule, to do all, which those things are important. However, they should be secondary to, okay, does this feel right to me? And if it does, or if it's creating confusion, if it's creating a lot more work and you're not getting anything back from it, you don't want to run away from it. You like, nope, this isn't it for me. No, you have to surrender in the present moment of the process and ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? What lesson do I need to learn because it doesn't feel right? And then once you figure out the lesson, you take action upon what you have to do from that lesson, then whatever that situation you were in will just naturally dissipate.
How do you know if what you're feeling is actually something that's legit and that you want to act on? How do you know if what you're feeling is something right?
So this is the number one thing that I see a lot of people getting hung up on, because you have to learn to differentiate between your fear and your intuition. And if your
Yeah.
body is out of alignment, if you have bad habits that have been feeding a misalignment, you will have misaligned guidance systems, right? Your GPS has to be attuned or adjusted. So this is the birthing, and this is why I believe that biohacking and medicine and even religion and faith, all these things are about to go parabolic, because we have to be in that experience without getting attached or being driven by our triggers, either in a positive way or a negative way, because we have to learn how to distinguish between our fear and our intuition. And the stronger your faith gets, the more confident you will be in your faith and your intuitive decisions. But everybody is in their own place at their own state and level of their journey. So this is not a plug and play scenario. This is going to be different for everyone. So wherever it is that you're at, whatever is happening, some people, things will be crumbling and crashing down, and maybe your lifestyle, you have to adjust for a little while because things change and now you don't have the same money you used to, but there's something that you have to learn going through that process, right? Or maybe suddenly your life takes off and all this big stuff happens. Now you have to learn how to adjust to that process and not get attached to any external factors, right? Seeking that external validation or falling in love with material things. I mean, now look, I love material stuff, right? Like and I don't think that's a problem. It's when you worship the material stuff. It's when that material stuff makes you service to self. It makes you more narcissistic. That's the problem. And all of these different things are about to be exposed in ways that we can't even imagine right now. So self-awareness, being the conscious observer of ourselves as we navigate these processes, the people that you're around, the work that you're doing, the state of your relationship that you're in, all these things are your teachers, and they're really going to fully engulf you into this lesson. It's like Earth's final exam for this next 4 years.
You're putting together a lot of seemingly disparate things that I want to pack into one box of beliefs that people can carry with them. What you're saying is that the profundity of the change that we're about to go in globally is going to be so great that if you're not ready, you could be in a position where you emotionally, spiritually, psychologically fall apart, or at a minimum, suffer. Being ready, as I'm understanding it then, is to connect the whole way that you're being so that you are positioned to be as agile as possible. Being ready in that sense goes as to making sure that you're taking care of your body so that you're not distracted by pointless physical ailments or just by feeling bad or by not being mentally alert because of physical lack of self-care that can keep you from being fully aware of changes or be able to rationally respond. You're talking about not having attachment to material things, because to the extent that changes that we may be facing may alter who has what and what the distribution of physical material goods may look like. If you are too attached to the way things are, you're again going to be either in a shock when it changes, or you're not going to be prepared to handle it if it changes for the positive, just like a lot of lottery winners aren't able to handle the sudden wealth that they have. You're also then talking about making sure that you are not being driven by ego, or that you're keeping the narcissism that we all have within us at bay, so that we can then not end up like Atlas, being all stubborn about holding on to what we want the world to look like, the control that we seek to have, so that then you can either embrace the abundance, brace the change in your abundance if it's negative, see the opportunity in that, and take in a lesson. By the way, egotism and narcissism has as part of it that you don't need to learn shit because you know everything already. And so being open as to releasing yourself from narcissism goes as to then also being open to lessons. I'm also hearing work to stay spiritually grounded, because spiritually grounded, whatever that may look like for you, may be the only thing that you have to hold on to if the shift becomes too radical for you or too sudden for you to be able to absorb. All of these, irrespective of whether this big shift happens in the near future or not, are good ways of being generally when it comes to interacting with and engaging in a world that has shifts just as a matter of course. And just with the way technology and the economy and all the politics and religion itself, social tribalism, divisions that you talked about earlier, all of these things are accelerating. So these are pieces of advice and ways of being that are practical that people can engage in right now. But you also briefly mentioned, before we move on, those who will go into this change kicking and screaming. And also you talked about force. Hey, you and Atlas have something in common. Big, muscular, huge guys. And it's interesting hearing a discussion about surrender in the face of change, and thinking about love, thinking about letting ego go, thinking about not being attached to anything, which may include our own physical manifestations as part of how you become ready and stay ready in the face of shifts. Okay. Man to man here. Let's be very honest. In a way, what you're saying goes against a lot of the ways people perceive being a real man or an effective man. A real man would fight to hold on to what they have. A real man, many would say, would defend. A real man would never surrender.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. And
yes, please talk.
I've worked with a lot of guys and the SEAL teams and special forces and stuff, doing a lot of healing work, because I used to live in that world. And when you push yourself to the edge, to the limit, and you explore the thresholds of what's possible, eventually you will come to that realization that being hard and being like, that's a toxic masculine trait that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. Now, what are some true positive masculine traits that really make a man a great man, leader, husband, provider, all those things? Is by having an ethos. You need to have a code. You need to have something that you believe in. Of course, that comes from faith as well, right?
Yeah.
but you need to have an ethos, and you need to be loyal to those ethos. You need to be of service to others. Now, of course, we have to take care of ourselves, and that's self-care is incredibly, it's not really an option at this point. You have to have that.
Wow.
Self-care is not selfishness. Self-care, you take care of yourself so you can be the best version of yourself for the people that you love, for your clients, for your family, for your loved ones, all that. By challenging yourself physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And challenging the self means that test your thresholds, whatever it is that you feel drawn to, whether it's working out or, rock climbing or tennis or pickleball. So whatever it might be, movement is life. And when we test ourselves, when we do our work to keep all our senses sharp, to be in touch with the different parts of ourselves, to our different systems in our body, stretching and or yoga or getting body work done, all those things, very important. And as long as we're loyal to those things within us for others out there, right, good things are going to happen. Where I think it gets disconnected is that a lot of men, they take on the burdens and responsibilities like Atlas of other people, of their parents or grandparents in their lineage, or they get hungry for power, hungry for control because they got a taste of it. And now it makes them feel empowered, but is actually incredibly disempowering. We're going to see a lot of that stuff happening big time with very powerful people out there in the world. So there are very distinct differences, but they're very subtle and minute. So to be able to show emotion, I see a lot of people out there that talk about stoicism, and I'm a firm believer and fan of stoicism, but I think a lot of people get it backwards, where some people believe stoicism is ignoring your emotions and just, being monotone in a way.
Yeah.
But for me, stoicism means mastering your emotions, feeling everything, all right, but having the inner discipline and strength to not react or respond, but to allow yourself, your heart, essentially, to make the decisions and rules.
You talked about the positive traits that are associated with masculinity. And I'm so glad that you raised that, because something that really drives me bonkers is this idea that the only things that characterize masculinity are those that are commonly pointed at as toxic. The idea that any behavior that is principally associated with the masculine is somehow toxic really, really hurts men, but because men are 50% of the population, it actually hurts the entire society. The idea of having a code, and that code being something that you as a male honor, is a powerful, positive statement that can actually help people when they're in the face of change or trauma. If change comes upon you and you don't know how to proceed, or despite your best attempts, you really aren't ready, well, having a code can actually provide you with guidance. In my own coaching work, I have my clients put together literally a written vision statement, and I have them put that on the wall. And when they are in situations in which they are really challenged about decisions that they might make, or they're afraid, I actually, during our clarity calls or during our coaching sessions, will have them turn around and look at that vision statement, and we'll walk through it sentence by sentence to see whether the decision that they have is aligned with that or not, whether the action they want to take is aligned with that. It is our version of a code. Then you also talked, by the way, around stoicism, and you used the word mastery of your emotions, because although you didn't explicitly say it, the other powerful quality that is traditionally associated with the masculine is self-discipline. Why, as I'm hearing it, are you choosing to focus a lot of your time, obviously just looking at you, on maintaining your physical fitness? Why? Because you need that, as we mentioned earlier, to be ready. But what does it take to do that? What does it teach you? Self-discipline. And when you talked
Right.
about power and addiction to that a second ago, so I practiced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for many years. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that
I
one.
get it, brother. No, I didn't. It's
And
awesome.
yeah, and one of the best things about it is, well, ostensibly the best, is that as you move up in your belt rank and as you in your skill level, you figure out how to get out of situations in which you may be feeling very powerless physically. And you can
Mm,
usually, if you're any good, figure out how to get the other person at least more or less co-equal to you in position, but the better you get, the more likely you are to be able to end up in a dominant position. Or if
yeah.
you are in a dominant position when you're starting, you get better and better and better at being able to stay there. The sense of power that comes with that is, like you said, tempting. It's almost like the testosterone just fills you up, and there you are. You're like the king of the world, like Atlas was the minute before Zeus presumably threw some thunderbolt knocked his ass to the ground, right? And but what you're also what that what jujitsu teaches you, if you truly adhere to it on a deeper level, is mastery or self-discipline even around the exercise of power. Okay, you're in that dominant position, you're in that position of power and authority. Now what are you doing with it? One time I was in a class and a person in a dominant position chose to attack someone of a lesser belt level, a lesser skill level, and that person passed out. The teacher stopped everything that we did. We all had to get around in class, and I mean, we got our asses read a riot act. Now, as a lawyer,
I'm
I was
sure.
glad he did that because the last thing I wanted this school to end up with was a lawsuit or even criminal
Yeah.
action that occurred on their premises. But beyond that, on a more spiritual level, what are you as someone who is possessing power? Going back to the idea of a code. Once you have the power,
Hmm.
are you mastering the power so that you can really live by that code? When you talk about things being revealed, Epstein files you talked about a minute ago, and I'm sure there's a lot more. Well, there is a lot more than that. People
Yeah.
being given the gift of wealth and power. Just in the news today, I read that some of the victims in this allegedly were 9-year-old girls. 9-year-old girls. How abusive of power can you get? And is the assertion of
Terrible.
power and dominance over anybody, no matter what, really something that proves that you're a man? A lot of people seem to think so. But if we're talking about shifts happening and horrible things being exposed, well,
Yeah.
like, what are you going to want to have revealed? And again, it might not even take a global shift. It could just take you exercising your power abusively against the wrong person, fucking around with the wrong individual, and a lot of
100%.
shit could be exposed that you're not going to want to have out there. So
Yeah.
I want to talk to you then a little bit more about what this shift into exposure and abuse means for those who are taking this Atlas approach to their life, fighting to hold on to what they have that may be exploitative, or maybe they weren't entitled to, or maybe isn't right for the new world. And what will be their fate? What will be the fate of those who choose to roll with it and attempt to act in a way that's aligned with the divine?
Well,
And just
for
make it one or
those
two
that
sentences,
choose
no more.
for those that choose to hold on to the old, you're gonna crumble. Bad things are gonna happen. You're eventually you're gonna lose everything. I'm just being real. Like that's the darkness is gonna take you, and you're gonna be consumed by your own darkness. On the other side, you're gonna become free. You're gonna feel like we're becoming free of the self-imposed prison that we've been living in for generations. And at the very core, those are really the two. I mean, this is the great awakening. We all have free will. We have a choice. So we gotta go with it.
When you talk about the great awakening or this shift of consciousness that you as well as other people talk about, what does it look? Is it like there's two societies that happen, or is it just that the dynamics within the world that we live in shift so much that what was sustainable for people that may have been in positions of wealth, influence, power, material success goes away, while those that have, irrespective of their social position, and moving forward in alignment, shifts for the better, or a reordering of society, or does something else altogether occur?
I'm not going to claim to fully know that answer, but
Mm.
I will tell you what I think is going to happen.
Mhm.
Vibrationally speaking, as we attune to this new energy, we are going to start to be drawn like a magnet to other people that are going in the same direction. We're going to be moving towards new people, new places, new things, situations, jobs, locations. And there's going to be a mass migration. A lot of people are going to start to move, or are going to start to shift. And as that happens, communities will start to form of these people that are in vibrational alignment. And then other communities will start to form that are in that other vibrational alignment. We're going to get to a point where the two frequencies are so different, they're completely polarized on opposite ends. So we're not going to even be aware of the other side. Now, I don't really know physically exactly what that means,
Yeah.
but I know that when we're there, it's not going to matter. We're not going to care, because we're not even going to be aware of it. We're going to be in our place. We're going to be divinely guided and protected. And, we're going to probably create new ways of literally being in a society, adopt new leadership, new rules of engagement, if you will, for the leadership, new ways of interacting, new ways of dealing, of trade, of shipment, of growing food, everything. Everything's going to change. And you can already see it happening at at certain levels, but it's going to speed up, and it's going to get much, much more dramatic. And I personally feel, and I hope that when you're watching this, you're looking at this from a very optimistic point of view. Like, all right, I'm on Team Light, and I'm ready to go. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Eh, Interestingly enough, after I had a sudden and severe health crisis a few years ago, that those who watch this show are very aware of, I left this crisis spiritually transformed. And people have asked me, how did you know that? It is sort of hard to explain, except to say, I knew. And one of the ways that it manifested itself was through relationships that I had. I knew
Mm,
the minute I left the hospital towards the end of this health crisis that many relationships in my life needed to end, and end immediately. And in
yeah.
every one of those situations, either very shortly afterwards, we had some sort of fight that just sort of naturally ended the relationship. And it was a fight that was probably relating to tensions that had been there. So I don't view that as a negative statement, one or the other. It was just something that happened.
Yeah.
Or else the person just sort of disappeared. And they sort of knew,
Right.
and I seemed to sort of know that this relationship had played out. In other cases, I heard out of the blue from people saying, I would like to talk to you, Scott. Or I reached
Mm,
out to them and said, I would like to talk to you, XYZ. And we had that conversation, and it was like literally a goodbye. We
wow.
caught up with each other, but by the end, it was like, it's nice talking to you. It's nice seeing you again. Not let's connect in 3 months. It wasn't like that at all. Meanwhile, other people rapidly began to come into my life. People like
Mm,
you, who might not have been in my orbit at all during that
mm,
earlier phase, or
right.
people like a spiritual guide that I worked with, who I actually have done a number of episodes of this series with, just began to appear. And these were people that I felt aligned with spiritually.
Beautiful.
That spiritual alignment generally also tied into intellectual alignment, as well as alignment in interest, as well as alignment with an understanding that what we were seeking to become in this phase of our lives was about connecting with a purpose driven by the desire to be a part of a larger divine plan. Do you see, perhaps, and I know neither of us can predict the future, but do you see, or is what you're describing more or less like a larger version of that process that I just described?
You hit the nail on the head, brother. That's exactly what it is. And people like you and I, we've been through crises before that have shown us that. So I feel like because we've already been through that, now that we're going to be seeing many other people going through that. And there could be, crises, that pops up for people like us. However, because we understand why it's happening and where it's going, it allows us the freedom to surrender to the change. It's still uncomfortable, yeah. But when you accept it, when you allow it to be okay, it actually makes it a lot almost like, okay, whatever's happening, it's shifted me into this new place. Don't know where it's going, but I know something had to change. So it's just like the weight just kind of comes off and you feel that lightness in your soul, and it's incredibly relieving.
It is so true, Nahum.
Right?
I quite regularly spend time during the day engaging with what I call devotions or intentional meditations or intentional prayers. And in those moments, and I always, by the way, make sure that I say it out loud because I don't want what I'm expressing to just be another little frivolous thought that floats around in the mind. I give gratitude for the horror that this health crisis really was, because it truly was a gift. And part of me can't help but wonder if, in the spirit of having a code, and like you mentioned earlier, being someone who is of service, some people, for reasons who knows why, may have experienced these crises and come out of the other side so that we can help people down the road who may be facing some of these crises that you're talking about, have that helping hand that they can reach out to, or that voice that says, you can do this, I've been there, that empathy that we need to be able to make it through. And it also goes as to the whole idea that really can move one out of a victim space, out of that Atlas, I'm going to fight and fight everything. Atlas, when you think about it, by fighting and fighting everything that was coming his way from Zeus and the other Olympian gods, was being a victim. I can't help but think that him standing there forever in the corner of the world, isolated, carrying this heavy burden for all eternity, was a way of saying, I'm not going to move from my victim stance. I'm going to stand up here and suffer. Whereas you talked about connecting with your divine meaning or your divine path, bringing a sense of lightness, as opposed to saying, no, I'm going to stay where I'm at, no matter what happens, even if it means I have to carry this burden forever and ever and ever. What kind of way is that to be?
That's hell, in my opinion. I mean, literally.
I wonder if, even thinking about your response here, to the extent, and people who read, for instance, books like The Four Agreements would probably agree with this, hell really is something that we create. And when we're resisting change, or when we are shying away from our purpose, what we're doing is literally building our own hell. It doesn't have to be. It's scary to face an existential crisis and turn into your purpose, because there's no guarantees that it's going to work out the way you think it will, or that it will happen on the time frame that you want it to, or that we're both entrepreneurs, or that you will have the money that you need when you need money. But on the other hand, still, the path that will walk you to heaven is, to me, infinitely better than self-condemnation, within the walls of hell with no future to even look towards.
100%. Absolutely. And the silver lining about all this, like I said at the very beginning, why I think like the biohacking world and plant medicine and peptides and all these different things that are really starting to get some notoriety.
Yeah.
That's industry is booming, and it's gonna start booming even more because there is a massive demand for it. And as people continue to wake up, there's going to be even more demand. So the good thing is that there's going to be plenty of opportunities for help to become healthy, to become aware, to do the inner work, and to connect with yourself at that deeper level. So let yourself receive it. That's all.
Mm. Was there a moment when you realized that where you had been wasn't where you needed to be? How
Oh
did
man.
you understand what your purpose would be?
Well, I've gone through some layers of that. I kind of feel like I've lived 5 lifetimes in this one lifetime.
Mm.
So for me, it wasn't necessarily one solid thing. And actually, that's I kind of break this all down in my book, which is actually an international best-selling book now.
Congratulations. That's
So I
awesome.
discuss all of that in my book. So it would be way too much to talk about here.
Well, why don't we use this then as an opportunity for you to tout your book as well as other things that you have going on, and then we can move into some final comments and thoughts. Because can't
Sure.
just say it's in my internationally best-selling book
Yeah.
and then just leave it a mystery as to what it is. And by the way, if you don't have a pen or pencil and you're watching this, go into the captions. I'm gonna have a link to it there. But tell us a little bit
Awesome.
about it, Nahum.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. So the Indigo Flame is my international best-selling book, and I also have another book called The Biohacker's Guide to Spiritual Bodybuilding. Essentially, both 10 years in the making of all the lessons that I've learned through all the experience that I've been through. I had a very interesting life. So all the lessons learned, I created steps. In fact, the Indigo Flame discusses how one can go about the process of healing yourself. So it lays out the dynamics of how you can go through your own customized process. Also, I walk people through it myself. That's what I do for a living. So you can reach me at optimizinghuman.com or spiritualbodybuilding.com. And I'm very active on Instagram, working on the TikTok thing, but I'm Spiritual Bodybuilder everywhere you look. So just look me up. And I love to help people and support you guys in going through these processes. So, I also just started a school as well too, the 𝗓𝗏𝗏 school community. So, I created a 12 module certification course based on my books. So you can really ingest and break it down to bite-sized pieces. I'm here to support everyone else going through this process, and I appreciate you guys being here.
I appreciate it too. You have said a lot during this conversation, and it has been deep, it's been practical, and it's been, for me at least, profoundly thought-provoking, but emotionally affecting too. If there
Great,
is
man.
one thing that I will take away from this conversation, it really is this idea that I harped on a little earlier, and I'm going to harp on again, which is being ready and thinking about what being ready really means, understanding it as taking steps necessary to get into a place of and staying in a place of physical, spiritual, emotional, as well as code related or personal values
Mhm.
related integrity, and
Yeah.
then understanding that whatever happens may happen. You may have to appear quote unquote weak and surrender to radical change when it happens. But at least when that radical change occurs, if you're ready by doing the things that you talked about earlier, you're going to navigate it in a way that will lead to the most optimistic and most divinely aligned outcome. That divine
Amen,
alignment
brother.
is really what life is all about, at least for your homeboy Scott here. But what about you? If there's one thing that you would
Everything.
like us to take away from this, or if there's something that you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to already, what might that be?
What pops into my mind is vulnerability is where empowerment is born. So, and a lot of people equate weakness to vulnerability. Vulnerability is not a weakness, but men have a very difficult time being vulnerable. So, allow yourself to be vulnerable, trust the process, and take care of self with the mindset of service to others. You follow those basic fundamentals, and you're going to be okay.
Words said with the clarity of a bell ringing from the top of Mount Olympus. Nahum, thank you so much. It has been great having you here at the Myth Slayer Cafe again, and know you are welcome back anytime.
I appreciate you, brother. It's been an honor.
It's been mine. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow this channel as well as Nahum's. That is in the caption below. Also follow both of us on social media. As Nahum mentioned earlier, he's got a very active Instagram presence. Both of our social media links are in the captions below. Make sure that you leave a comment directly beneath this video. If you have questions, if you want to hear more from Nahum, if you have mythical figures or other leadership or spiritually oriented questions that you would like the show to dive into, for heaven's sake, tell us about it, and we can begin to think about how to bring that to you. And then make sure that you come back again for the next episode, because above all else, I want your future to be epic.